Alright, so I had to make a next video for 7.5 just for part 2 because there's one example that's really important that you understand how to do, and it's graphing inequality. So here's example 3, and if you want to follow along with me on the page, it's page 328 in big green. And this will show you how to actually graph on a number line. Now, bear with my drawing on here. I'm going to do the best I can. But the directions just simply say graph. And they give us, let me get back to my pencil here. They give us G is greater than 2. So now we have to graph this on a number line. So I want you to set up a number line. I'm going to pause it and draw it. And then I want you to do the same thing. So the first step is to draw a number line. The biggest thing that you need to make sure that you're paying attention to is I've got the number 2 here. Okay, so you need to at least go 2 to the right, negative 2 to the left, and probably 1 or 2 beyond that, okay? Because we're going to have to do something which we call test it out, all right? So the first thing we do is we want to graph 2, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a circle around the number 2, like this. It almost looks like a target or something. Okay, it's an open circle. We use an open circle because it is not a solution. Okay, we're not going to color in that circle. 2 is not a solution. So our statement says that G is greater than 2. So if I were to test a solution and think about this, I could just test it with -1. If I took -1 and I filled it in and put it right here, is -1 greater than 2? No, it's not. So that's my test, okay? If I went on the other side of 2 and I said 4, is 4 greater than 2? Yeah, I mean, think of it like money. I'd rather have $4 than $2, so yeah, it's a greater number. So that's the way you actually do the graph, and the graph should look something like this. So now you draw a solid line and a solid arrow to the right. That is graphing that inequality on a number line. So basically what this statement is telling me is that any number that goes this way on my number line, I can keep going, that means G could equal that. G cannot equal 2 because I don't have that line underneath my inequality. If I could get to my screen. Okay, there's no line under there. If there's no line under there, then it means it's not filled in. I'm going to show you another example here in a moment. So let's try to graph x is greater than or equal to 2. So you start with doing your graph, okay, and make sure that you're going above the number at least by 1 or 2 that you're actually graphing so that you can do tests. So now because this number, let me change my color here, is 2, that's where I put my circle, okay? So my circle goes there, but then I have to look at this part of my equation. I'm sorry, inequality, it's not an equation. This part of the inequality, and that will tell me whether I color in the circle or I don't. The last one I didn't color it in because it did not have a line under it. So that line indicates that I make a solid circle. The reason I make a solid circle is because x could equal 2. So now I have to figure out which way do I draw my arrow. X has to be greater than or equal to 2. So this is where you start testing. What about -1 or 0? Is 0 greater than or equal to 2? No, it's less than. So we're not going to go this way. That means we have to go this way with it, to the right. So I'm going to color in my arrow, my remaining arrow to the right. And that's what my graph should look like. So this means that x is greater than any part or any number that goes to the right of 2. All right, what if we had a problem like this? They give us the inequality that's graphed on a number line, and we need to write an inequality that represents the graph. So what you do, and you can make up any variable that you want. We can just use x. We've got, we know that we have, let me get a different color here. We've got 1 is where we're starting, and we're going to use x as our variable. So we have to read what this says. This part is all what x could equal. Could it equal 1? No, because it's not a colored circle. So we can say x, and we have 1. Is it less than? Is it greater than? Is it less than or equal to? Or is it greater than or equal to? Well, let's look at, if I use negative 2, is negative 2 less than 1? Yes, and we're showing that x would be represented by any of these numbers. So we know that our answer should be x is less than 1. It's not equal to, couldn't be equal to because it's not colored in. So this would be my final answer on something like this. All right, let's try this one. So I'm going to graph the inequality on a number line. I have 0 is less than or equal to b. So I have to figure out what b could be equal to. So I draw out my number line, and I start with graphing my 0. So now I have 0, let's go with red. I graph 0 on my number line. I look at my inequality sign in there, and I realize that it also could equal that. So that's where I color it in and make sure it's completely solid, because it could be 0. Now I can do my test. So 0 is less than or equal to b. So let's try 1. If I had 1 and I filled that in, is 0 less than or equal to 1? Yeah. So 0 is less than 1. Let's try it over here. Is 0 less than or equal to 2? Negative 2? No, negative 2 is less than 0. So that one wouldn't work. So now, because I tested it out, I can color in the area to the right of the arrow. And it should look like that. That would be your answer. Now, I know these can be a little bit confusing. Sometimes when you have the number before the inequality sign, it gets a little bit more confusing. You would think less than means it would go that way. However, you really have to test it out with some numbers to make sure. It would actually go to the right because it's less than. 0 is, it's any number that is greater than 0, but it doesn't state it that way. So be careful on those. All right, and that would end your video part 2.